It is now my honor to introduce to you our opening fireside chat entitled New Cyber Priorities for the Biden Administration. Moderating will be Tom Ritchie, the Vice President for Business Development at Cybersecurity Training and Services for Raytheon Intelligence and Space. Tom envisioned this event with me earlier this year, and he and his amazing team led by John DeSimone have worked tirelessly to bring this event to fruition for you today. We thank them very much for their support of this important summit. Tom Ritchie will be interviewing Chris DeRusha, the Federal Chief Information Security Officer, in one of the first public interviews with Chris in his new role as the federal CISO. Please enjoy this fascinating kickoff fireside.
Good morning, Chris. Listen, I want to start by, first of all, welcoming you and thanking you for kicking off this summit, which we believe is really important to the nation, to our national security, to government, and to industry. And it's your presence makes it even more so. Secondly, I want to congratulate you on your appointment to your new role as the Chief Information Security Officer for President Biden. No small accomplishment. Congratulations on that. And I'd like to offer an opportunity for you to share some opening remarks, if you would. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's great. Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate the congratulations. And it's fantastic to be here kicking off this year's Cybersecurity Defense Summit. And it's a bit humbling when you look at the agenda of accomplished leaders that'll be following me. One of the things I really like about this conference is that it's got a really rich international participation as well. I mean, as we know, it's not just important to share best practices and our lessons learned between industry and government here in the US, but getting that perspective of multinational companies navigating a myriad of landscapes, and then government approaches to managing risk as well, and just kind of keeping that international lens as a really healthy reminder of the many different ways that one can prioritize managing these risks that we're all facing. So again, I'm just really looking forward to the conversations that we're going to hear today, and look forward to getting going here with you this morning.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. And I will say I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the past few weeks in preparation for this conversation. And so we're going to open up with the first question around the concept of collective defense, which we've discussed. As you know, it expands across multiple agencies. And what relationships in that spirit are most important to you to be successful in your new role? What conclusion might industry and government draw about the new working relationships that are inferred from that collective defense concept and that are important to you in your new role?
Yeah, well, this is definitely a team sport. My office's primary area of responsibility is overseeing federal civilian agencies, as you know. But we work every day with National Security Council staff, Deputy National Security Advisor Ann Neuberger's team in particular, the DHS CISA team. Both have critical roles in federal cybersecurity as well, but they also have that broader aperture and focus. I also maintain very close working partnerships with the agency CISOs. I chair a CISO council with Stephen Hernandez, who I believe is also speaking at this conference later today. And we've got a series of working groups under that forum where we tackle a lot of these hard issues together. I participate in the CIO council meetings as well, trying to make sure I'm keeping a pulse on the broader IT priorities and challenges. Often these are different sides of the same coin that we're kind of hitting, and partner closely with the intelligence community and law enforcement as well. In particular, my role as the chair of the Federal Acquisition Security Council, working on supply chain risks. I'm also looking forward to working with the newly created Office of the National Cyber Director. And look, it's been a tough few months for federal government, and as you can see, CISA has been out there issuing multiple emergency directives. Federal civilian government's been extremely busy, and I think that the NCD is going to add some really fantastic capacity and strategic lens, and have a kind of an immediate impact. So, again, a lot of players here. Everyone's got their role, and our job's just to coordinate well and work well together.
Fantastic. It sounds really, really exciting, Chris. I know you're really anxious to get going. I'm curious what your thoughts are, because we know it's important to us in industry, I'm sure as well to you, on building more efficient and effective public-private partnerships.
Yeah, absolutely is. So look, how I think about this is, we've entered the digital age fully. And how I think about cybersecurity, our shared mission is managing risk in the digital age. And so, as you think about that, society hasn't really unpacked fully what types of risks we're facing, what that means for our national economic security, and how we're really going to optimally organize to address those risks between government and industry. And so in a lot of ways, we're learning to do this risk management in this new era together. And when you look, unfortunately, I think a lot of individuals are still fairly unprepared to manage their own personal risks, no matter when you get into the professional cyber risk responsibilities. So what does that mean for how we're going to work together? So I think that it means industry and government need to partner closely so that we can educate not just the American public, but our workforces, and try to help them understand the challenges and the responsibilities that they've got as a part of that. Another thing I'd say about the collaboration is I think the SolarWinds event that just happened is a really important use case that's going to be studied moving forward. Companies came together here to address a national security risk in a way that I'm not sure I'd seen before. I mean, I'd seen a lot of good collaboration, but this was really pretty deep, rich collaboration, working across silos, sharing threat information in real time. It was really in full effect. And what I want to think about is, like, how do we bottle that up? How do we bottle lightning here? And how do we, as we're moving forward in our public-private partnerships, how do we remember this lesson that we would not be this far along in our recovery efforts if we hadn't had that information sharing between industry and government in this event. So, again, I guess the takeaway here is no matter who's seeing this first, what we've got to work on together is figuring out how to share the information quickly and then coordinate our response efforts as we go forward. It's really the only way we're going to be successful with the new types of threats we're facing.
I couldn't agree more, Chris. And I know a lot of our industry partners and who are online with the summit today are appreciating very much that perspective. The next question what are really your thoughts on government's approach to the technology supply chain? We hear a lot about that. And where do you see the government's next move in this space?
Yeah, so supply chain risk management, I mean, it's a huge topic, and it's definitely a priority of the administration. I'm sure all of you saw the recent executive order on America's supply chains, which was released, I believe, in late February. So, there's actually, as part of that, there's a whole 1-year review that's going to occur on the ICT industrial base, and so that's an explicit task in there. But there's also a lot of crossover for ICT reviews in the energy, transportation, semiconductor, just to name a few reviews that are part of that. So a lot of work packed into that EO. My team's closely involved in implementation, as are a lot of other White House and agency elements. And I guess another one in this space that I'd highlight is the Federal Acquisition Security Council, which the FASC I already mentioned that I chair. That gives us the ability to assess supply chain products, software products, and others, and make recommendations on whether or not those products or companies should be allowed to maintain a business relationship with government. And that's a powerful tool, and it's one that's got to be used carefully and judiciously. But what I like about it is I think that it should enable us to have some consistent approaches that are well reasoned. And we've got all of the right government agencies on there, lots of good dialogue and conversation. And I think it's a good place to start getting these things consistent and right as we move forward to address these risks.
Thanks very much, Chris. And Chris, I know this next question is front and center for you and front and center for all of us, and that's around zero trust. We can't have these kinds of conversations without having zero trust at the middle. So what are your thoughts on its use, the methodologies around the design to build and proactive cyber defense at scale, and where it plays?
Yeah, Well, so let's, I'm sure a lot of the audience is familiar with Zero Trust, but just in case, maybe I'll take a step back and kind of talk about how, at least how I think about the concept of Zero Trust. So, I really believe it's rooted in three core principles: verifying every user, validating every device, and then within that, limiting access intelligently. And so this is obviously a shift away from the prior trust model that assumed if a user is behind a firewall, then they can be trusted. And obviously, this isn't bearing out anymore. So we've got to move to this new model that assumes everyone and everything is untrustworthy until we're able to prove otherwise, right? So that's the fundamental way that I kind of frame this. What I'd say about government here, government's been working towards this framework of Zero Trust for a while. But in earnest, in the past few years, agencies are building out really strong foundations around identity and credential access management. We're also moving closer and closer to doing continuous monitoring, dynamic management. So, I know, I don't want to get too far ahead because I know this is a topic later today in the conference for, I think, a couple of sessions. One led by some of our federal industry leaders and federal government, and then also one led by industry leaders. So I really also look forward to hearing their perspectives because there are a lot of different frameworks in this space right now. And I think that'll be one of the things that we've got to do is streamline that a little bit, and ensure that we don't have too many different kind of frameworks for what we mean when we talk about Zero Trust. But again, when you really break it down, a lot of this stuff already exists, and part of this, and maybe this isn't talked about as much because it's not on the technology side, but it's also a shifting in mindset, and it's going to require some commitment and focus from all sorts of different levels and partners within an organization, from the business side as well, right? And so like one could view this as potentially causing some challenges or disruptions in the way the workforce currently does business or accesses resources. And some may find it inconvenient. So when that happens, we're really going to need the business side of the house to understand why we're making these changes and how it's good for the organization and also for them. And so, as always in our space, this is going to be a lot about managing up to our leadership outside of the IT cone, and just good communication with the business side of the house is going to be necessary, or I think it'll just go slower than it could if we don't do a good job of that. So that's, there's kind of my top line thinking about Zero Trust, big concept.
I really appreciate that answer, Chris. I know that the cultural impact of Zero Trust is key and will be a continued challenge for all of us in the private sector and in government. So thank you for that. I have another question, if you don't mind, is around building and better aligning to the federal budget. As you look at the changes in some of the president's funding lines around the post SolarWinds response, et cetera, how are you looking to ensure a fully integrated end-to-end cybersecurity approach for the DoD and federal infrastructure? And what do you consider to be the greatest challenges to developing and deploying proactive cyber defenses within our existing acquisition processes?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think I'll break it down to the two pieces that you've got there. I'll start with the budget side of this, and then address some of the acquisition questions. Look, as we all know, in government industry, it doesn't matter where, the risk landscape that we're facing is it's moving fast, and our adversaries, as we just saw in this past couple of events, particularly SolarWinds, they're getting pretty good, pretty stealthy. And what that's going to mean is we've got to be agile, and particularly in government, we don't necessarily have a reputation for being so. So I think where that starts then is we as IT and security professionals have got to get really good at being compelling about how we're communicating these risks, and then the investments that are going to need to be made to all of the stakeholders that need to kind of get this message. And so congressional colleagues, agency leadership, CFOs, plenty of other key stakeholders that I'm sure you can think of in your own business environment. And we've got to do a better job, in my view, of explaining the ROI and what this is buying down. And there's lots of different ways to cut that and get it ROI, but and there's some good stuff starting to emerge out there and best practices in the space. But it is hard to do still. I'm not going to pretend like there's some easy answer that everyone's missing. There's not. But I think we've got to focus on that and help each other and share lessons on when we're really figuring out how to be compelling. That's a type of sharing I'd really like to see more, not just technical sharing, but getting into this key, budget ask sharing as well. And again, this is going to take a sustained long-term effort too. I mean, we're talking about big numbers here. The Biden administration, as you saw, we came out on transition with over a $10 billion ask originally in the American Rescue Plan to focus on rebuilding federal IT. And there was a reason we picked that number. And frankly, we sort of view that number as a down payment. And I think that everyone understands that when we look across the breadth and scope of the federal IT footprint of what's going to need to be modernized. And look, I also think it was a great example of where communication occurred well with Congress. I mean, Congress made a significant investment and ended up giving $2 billion for these IT and cyber initiatives in the American Rescue Plan, which we're extremely appreciative for. And it's a great start. And it's now incumbent on us, as the administration, to show the value of what they've provided and demonstrate that clear ROI. So that's a top priority for myself. It's a top priority for the federal CIO, Claire Martirana. And we're working closely with GSA and others, to make that happen in DHS. So, again, it can happen, and it just takes a lot of really good planning and coordination. And so, that's budget side. I think I'll flip to the acquisition question now. We've got to continue to strive, at least to act like an enterprise and think like an enterprise. Particularly in my job, I mean, that's the goal. That we're doing enterprise risk management largely, and then enterprise delivery on the other side of our house. And so that means we got to continue to push for standardized approaches here and try to reduce the prevalence of unique requirements, right? Which is something we all deal with, and that's something we're gonna have to continue to work on. As far as innovation in this space to try to get things in faster, I think DoD has made some good progress in this that we can look at on the federal civilian side with the other transaction authorities, OTA. And you got DIUX largely operating out of Silicon Valley. The labs are using OTAs, I think having some success, but that's something I'd like to learn more about as I ramp up in my role. Agencies do have acquisition innovation advocates. There's innovation labs. DHS has got one that they've been promoting heavily, the Procurement Innovation Lab. Again, what are these about? They're trying to reduce barriers, shorten times to award, taking a good hard look at outcome-oriented approach vis-a-vis some other traditional ways of looking at it. So, I think there's a lot of things going on, but we do need to. We've got a lot of work to do here, and I don't want to give the impression that I think that we're not staring down a road of some hard work. We are, and I think that part of this is also honestly just it's an improvement of process. And OMB, some of my peers in the office of OFPP have provided myth busting guidance in the past, where their goal of that is to just say, hey, look, contracting officers across federal government, there's existing authorities and vehicles and things that you can use, and it's about a little bit about education on that side. So again, we've got work to do, and we do understand that we need to be able to move fast. So the tech is innovating. Industry is doing its job of innovating fast and keeping up with their adversaries, and we on the federal side need to work together to get that tech into government faster, and that's something that I'm definitely going to be focused on.
That's fantastic. And Chris, one final closing question as we wrap up our opening session. First of all, again, I can see you have a lot of passion. We share that passion in industry, academia, NGOs, and so on, and really, really are partnering with you to ensure and hope for the best success for you. With that thought in mind, what can you share with us about what you may require, ask of us to help you ensure your success?
Yeah, well, I'll take that one as an open question as well for continued collaboration and dialogue, because I think that's the first thing I want to say is I got an open door to feedback from industry. We need to understand your perspectives, and I'd say that's the most important thing, because you all are seeing a lot, and we want to hear from you, and we want to figure out how to help solve some of the problems that you've got. But what I'd say is to answer your question directly, say a few things, like let's be creative and let's think big. That means we're going to have to push some boundaries on the way we've traditionally tackled problems, but let's do that. I mean, when you look at what's happened in the past few months, what I fear a little bit is that we could kind of get back into a place where we're sort of settling back into the way we've been doing things, and I really think we've got to use this moment as a enduring wake up call. So that's one thing that I'd say. So, that also sometimes means we should revisit good ideas that may have not seen their time yet. Maybe we didn't think they were achievable when they came up. But that's something that continues to strike me. Is that something comes up and it's like, well, yeah, that seems really logical. I remember talking about that 7 years ago. Why didn't we take that on then? Well, we had a good reason, right? I think, and I've been doing this for a little while, but a lot of you have been doing it for a lot longer, 20, 30 years more. And a lot of the solutions that have been discussed over that period of time still are relevant. And so I just remind everyone of that, and like let's look back at some of those good ideas and try to figure out if the time is now. Another one that is really important to me, and this will be a challenge. This is back to, Tom, your point about culture, but I think we've got to move away from the narratives that blame the victim, okay? And instead surge help to victims and focus on that. And I think there's a lot of good reasons that this still happens. And I'm not suggesting that this is an uncomplicated thing to do. But again, as long as entities and organizations are doing what they should be doing and making the investments that they should be making, and sometimes the best are getting beaten here. Let's not focus on a culture of blame there. Let's just focus on the forward plan to help each other get out of it and move forward. Which is not saying that people shouldn't be held accountable if they're not doing the right things. That is also important. People do need to, all organizations need to be making an investment in cybersecurity this day and age. That's just an investment that needs to be made. But look, there's a lot of really good people that are devoting their whole selves to this. Okay, and we know this. I mean, this is the industry we've all chosen, and I know that as leaders, you do this anyway, but I think it's just lifting them up, removing their barriers, helping others understand the potential consequences of sort of remaining in this status quo environment that we've got, and just kind of being the leaders here together. And so, again, as I started with, for me in particular, it's an open door for feedback from you all. It's a partnership, and something that I look forward to as I take on this big role. I'm really excited to do it, and I'm excited to hear what everybody else has got to say at this conference today. And just Tom, thank you so much for right that support of this event and being the key sponsor here, and just look forward to what's next here down the agenda.
Well, Chris, I'll tell you, I want to thank you. You've all given us a lot to think about, and I really appreciate you opening up our summit, which is jam-packed with other speakers that'll follow your lead and your vision. We're partnering with you. We are vested in your success for our nation, and we want to wish you all the best in your new role. So thanks again so much for taking time with us today. We appreciate it.
Tom and Chris, we really appreciate your participation today. Shortly, each of you will hear a terrific panel on why a paradigm shift is needed for cybersecurity. Thank you.